these canoeing expeditions that you've been on in the past couple of months, have you picked up any new camping gear that you really recommend? Like last time you were talking about some of the camping gear that you were saying, go out and buy this stuff.
Well, you know, camping gear is always changing. I mean, there's not a year that goes by that they don't come up with something new. New isn't always better. And I mean, I can cite a number of examples where old was better and remains better. But probably the newest, every once in a while, some very special products come along, and one of which I would encourage your listeners to buy, if they want to buy one. It's called a Lucy Light. Now, I don't know if they're available in the UK, but I think they probably are. Lucy Light, L-U-C-I.
Right.
So, and the cool, what this is, it's a LED operated, picture a round disc, okay? You blow this thing up so it blows into like a lantern that's about 3 or 4 inches deep. And it has 10 LED lights on it and a solar charger. So you hang it on your tent or your bed. It weighs almost nothing, okay? And it collapses to the size of a pancake and then expands to about 4 inches to lantern size. With these, I'm not kidding, with these 10 LED lights, it is super duper bright. It's almost like a single mantle Coleman lantern. It's almost that bright. And it'll run like 10 to 12 hours on a full charge. And it only takes a couple hours to charge this thing up. You can set it on, you can pancake it flat, set it on the dashboard of your car, hang it from your tent, whatever you want. And it's wonderful. Like, I don't even use a headlamp anymore. I just grab my Lucy Light and away I go. And they sell for, I think they're around $20 here in the States. I don't know. What's the dollar and the pound right now?
That would work out at about €10 or £10 to our UK or Irish listeners there. Incredible price to actually get something like that.
Yeah, so check that out, because that is one, I think that's one of the coolest products. And actually, I understand that this Lucy Light was really not designed for camping. It was really designed for, you know, displaced people, people in tents, you know, that have no light. That's a wonderful product. I'd say that's one of my most favorite products. And another one of my products, I don't know, do you guys treat water, do water treatment there in the UK?
Yeah, well, anywhere that you do wild expeditions, you're going to have to do water treatment. And instead of carrying buckets and buckets of water, you need to find some way of treating water. Yes.
Well, do you guys have this SteriPEN over there? Are you familiar with the SteriPEN?
No.
Well, the SteriPEN, this is my favorite water treatment. This thing is about the size of, let's say, a large magic marker kind of a thing. Okay, it's probably about 8 inches long and maybe an inch or so in diameter. And all it is an ultraviolet bulb with 4 AA lithium batteries in it. And to treat the water, it only works on a clear water sample, but what it does is the ultraviolet light goes on, and in 1 minute, it can treat up to 1 liter of water at a time. It takes approximately 1 minute to treat 1 liter. You just fill the poly bottle up, you put this thing in, you push the button, this ultraviolet light comes on, and it kills all the bacteria. And it's designed so that the minute you remove it from the water and it hits the air, the UV light goes out. Because if it didn't go out, you know, you could damage your eyes with it. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about it is there's nothing to get clogged up. It's very light. It's very compact. And unlike any one of these filters or purifiers, there's no aftertaste.
Yes, and that's the key thing.
No chemical aftertaste. So that's a trick. Now here's another trick that your readers might enjoy. You know, one of the things I've been doing lately is I've been doing these U.S. rivers, because I've sort of done my Canadian shtick for a lot of years. And the western rivers in this country are beautiful, but they look like chocolate malt. In other words, there's so much sediment in them. Well, most people who do rivers like the San Juan and the Green River and the Colorado, they carry water with them. Well, a gallon of water weighs about 7 pounds. Okay? You need a gallon a day, so go figure. We use alum. This is the same alum that you buy. You can get this at any drugstore, okay? You can buy a bottle of alum here in this country for about $10, okay? And then you use this alum trick. What you do, you take this silty water. Let's say you have a gallon of silty water. You use about a teaspoon of alum. You don't need more than that, okay? Just about a teaspoon of alum to a gallon of water. And then you take a stick and you just stir in the same direction all the time, very, very slowly, like clockwise or counterclockwise. You do this for about 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden you will notice something that looks like snowflakes forming in the water. That means it's coagulating. Stop stirring, and all of a sudden, in about 2 minutes, the whole thing will coagulate and go right to the bottom. You'll have a clear water sample at the top. You can peel that clear water sample off, treat it with a SteriPEN, and have perfectly tasting water.
Now, Cliff, I'm looking at one of your old articles here, and there was the 2 C's. Camp and comfort are not mutually exclusive. Here's how you can camp in comfort on your next scout outing. To camp in comfort in any terrain, what would be your top, let's say, 5 things to bring with you that, apart from your sleeping bag, what would you recommend?
Well, okay, let's start out with sleeping bags. Okay. The climate in the UK is generally a little bit, isn't quite as severe as it is in North America. So with the sleeping bag, I would say my observation has been most people buy sleeping bags that are too warm. You don't need one of this. If you buy a sleeping bag that is good to about, okay, I don't think in Celsius, so you'll have to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. If you get a sleeping bag that's good down, I'd say 35 degrees. Mm-hmm. That would be what, that would be, I don't know, 3 or 4 degrees Celsius, something like that, okay? That's enough, okay? If you put a pair of long wool underwear on, okay, that's going to take that down another 10 degrees. If you're sharing a tent with somebody, that's going to drop at another 8 to 10 degrees. So with a 35-degree sleeping bag or a 5, 6, 7 degrees Celsius bag, however it works out, you should be comfortable to quite a bit below freezing, actually, and you'll have a lighter, more comfortable bag. Mm-hmm. And I would say to people on the bags, you know what? Get a down bag, not a synthetic bag. Why? One, you'll never wear it out. 2, a down bag is lighter, more compact. It doesn't hold odors, and it will last way longer than any other bag. And it has a wider temperature comfort range than any other bag, which means it will be warmer when it's cool and cooler when it's warm than any bag that's made of synthetics. Mm-hmm. All right, then you come to a sleeping pad. For adults, you know, just get the most comfortable sleeping mat you have. There's a lot of good ones out there, so, you know, I don't really want to recommend one over the other, but I would say to you, whatever you get's going to be covered with plastic, mm-hmm. all right? Now, the last time I slept on plastic, I was about 2 years old, okay? It's not very comfortable. Mm-hmm. And if it's hot, if it's a hot night, which oftentimes it is when you're camping, you're going to be sleeping almost bare skin right on this foam pad. Make a cover for your foam pad. Make it out of, well, if you can find merino wool, that's wonderful. If you can't, a nice cotton sheet or cotton polyester sheet, just an envelope style, sew it up. You can sleep on it bare skin against your back. It will add a little bit of temperature. In other words, it'll add a little bit of insulation to you. Your bag will not slide around on the slippery floor of the tent. And you'll protect the bag from punctures. And when you get home, you can just wash the cover and you'll have a clean. So that's 2 things. So you want 3 more comfort things.
Well, even if we go down the tent route here, Cliff. Now, before we go into the tents, I'm going to ask you about the camp mats that you were talking about. Do you believe in these self-inflating mats?
Yeah, do I believe in the self-inflating mats? You know, I love self-inflating mats. And actually, one of my favorite mats, which is a Nemo, is not self-inflating. It takes me roughly 70 pumps to get it pumped up. It's luxurious and wonderful when I'm on it. But oftentimes, I find myself taking a different mat because I just can't stand 70 pumps every time I want to pump this thing up. Mm-hmm. Okay, mm-hmm. So, you know, there's goods and bads, but I would say if you could find a self-inflating one that's at least, none of them are completely self-inflating, but some of them, you just open the valve, stick them in the tent, go away for 10 minutes, come back, and maybe a half a dozen breaths or so, and you're up to speed on it. So absolutely yes. I mean, those are two of the most wonderful things. Other things that are really important. All right. I don't know about the UK. Well, it rains a lot in the UK.
It does.
We see all these movies of Londoners carrying umbrellas, so you guys get plenty of rain. Good rain gear is important. And you know, when you get good rain gear, though, you have to make some choices. You can spend hundreds of dollars on this stuff, which, quite frankly, is ludicrous. All right. The thing I think it's important to remember about rain gear should be worn for only one reason: rain. Period. Not wind. Okay, because if you wear a $300 Gore-Tex parka as a wind jacket, you're going to lean against a tree, you're going to carry a canoe on your shoulder, you're going to do whatever. You're going to get holes in this thing, and once you get holes in it, it's worthless. Rain gear has to be inviolate. So I would say, you know, buy a lightweight rain jacket. Okay, Gore-Tex is fine if that's what you want, but use it only for rain. When it comes to the pants, you're always sitting down on something. To me, it's absolutely insane to spend a couple of $100s on a pair of Gore-Tex pants that you're going to, if you're doing any of this hardcore stuff, you're going to ruin those pants in a couple of trips. Okay. You're going to put holes in them. So, you know, my advice is get an inexpensive nylon or waterproof nylon coated pair of pants. Get the pants about a size bigger than you usually wear so that you can just slip them right over your boots and everything else. And by the way, your rain jacket should be a size bigger than you usually wear too, so it'll fit over bulky clothes. So the rain pants, I plan to replace every few years. The jacket should last you decades, literally, if you just use it only for rain. For wind, get a shell jacket, a wind shell. And you know what? That's not as easy as it sounds, because it seems like every camper today, they freak out if they get a drop of rain on their body. God forbid I should get a drop of rain on my body. So they buy, if they don't buy Gore-Tex, they choose a material that has what we call a DWR finish in, durable water repellent finish. Water runs off it, beads off it. That's the good news. The bad news is sweat stays inside. If you're active, if you're skiing, if you're canoeing, you're going to sweat to death in this thing. What you want is either a nylon, a polyester, or even a cotton shell jacket that has absolutely no finish on it. Not a hint of DWR. Try to find one. Here in the U.S., we couldn't find one. I went online, I looked all over. I could not find a single one that did not have a DWR finish on it. Wow. Ultimately, we had one built by Paragus Northwoods Company in Ely, Minnesota. It's nylon, and one drop of water goes right through it. Perfect. That's exactly what I want.
Now, let's go into the tents, right? Now, I've heard that to get a good height tent, Cliff, you have to have as many ridge poles going over the height tent as possible, because it makes it wind resistant if you're on the side of a mountain. Now, do you believe that?
Well, first off, I would say with some exceptions, most of the European tents I've seen are better than most of the U.S. tents I've seen. And the reason why is because here in the U.S., it's totally about marketing. We have plastic windows in tents. Well, if you've ever owned a convertible with plastic windows, you know how long that lasts, all right? We have color-coded, our bug net has to be color-coded. So if you have a yellow tent, you need yellow bug netting. Horace Capehart at the turn of the century wrote, head netting should be black so that you can see through it, because any other color reflects light into the eyes. I mean, German automobile manufacturers get this. Look at a BMW or Mercedes-Benz, okay? There's things that are inviolate. For example, the dashboard is always black. The steering wheel is always black, okay? And the instrumentation is red. Why? Because it's the only color that doesn't reflect, affect your visual purple. It's the same thing in airplanes and military vehicles. It's always red. But no, we got to color code it because that's what people want. I think the Europeans with their tent designs are more sensible. But one of the differences is many of the European tents, especially the Scandinavian ones, the outer fly and the interior tent are connected. Mm-hmm. So when you put the tent up in a rain, it stays dry because you don't have to put a fly on it. It's also a lot faster to set up because you don't have to connect the fly, okay? And the fly sticks right to the ground. It covers every seam and every zipper. Whereas in US tents, we have space between the fly and the floor. The idea being, oh, you get more ventilation this way. Give me a break. You know what you get? A little bit lighter weight, a little bit lighter bulk, and a little bit cheaper product because you have less fabric. Okay, that's what you really get. In Scandinavia, it's hard to find tents that are not tunnels. Okay, in the U.S., it's hard to find tents that are not domes. Okay, it depends what you're doing. The truth of the matter is, if you went back in time 30 or 40 years to the lightweight revolution with guys like Jerry Cunningham, Jerry Equipment, and so forth, the lightest weight tents were A-frames.
Yes.
It's very simple A-frames with an eye pole at each end. I mean, I have one that dates back to the 1960s. It's an honest two-person tent, very roomy two-person tent. It's an old Jerry Fireside, and it weighs 3.5 pounds. That's pretty light today. And as far as putting the tent up is concerned, with its attached fly, 2 eye poles, and 4 stakes, it goes up in about a minute and a half. So what we've done when we went to the domes, okay, domes made great Eskimo igloos because they're rigid structures. But a dome tent is not a rigid structure unless you have pole after pole after pole. And threading all these poles is time and effort. And then because you have a hexagon-shaped floor or octagon or whatever they're using, you can't have a bathtub floor. Now, for listeners who aren't sure what a bathtub floor is, that's a floor that wraps up the sidewalls a bit before it's sewn to the canopy. That means there are no seams in direct contact with the ground. Well, all your domes by nature pretty much have to have floor level seams, okay? Now, one solution is to cover those floor level seams with material. In other words, a fly that goes all the way to the ground. But they don't do this. What they do instead is they tape the seams at the factory, okay? Waterproof tape them. There's good news and bad news to this. The good news is it usually works. The bad news is eventually that tape's going to pull loose in a little portion and water's going to be coming in. And the other bad news is and if your listeners can follow me on this, if you take a single wall tent, in other words, a tent that does not have a fly, and you take a pin and you put a hole in the side of the tent, a pinhole, and it rains, will water come in the tent? The answer is yes. It will come in the tent, it will slither right down the inside of the material ultimately onto you. Now, put a fly over this. Now, let's do the same experiment by taking a needle and putting a small hole in the fly. Will water come onto you? No. It will go through the fly, slither down the inside of the fly, and fall on the ground. So, if you expand this out, if you have a tent that the fly does not come completely to the ground, and say there's a space, say there's a 6-inch space, which would be about what? Say about 15 centimeters or something like that, huh? And you put a hole in that space, in that floor, that is not covered by the fly, water will come in and onto you. That's why you want a fly that completely goes to the ground. Now, you asked about this thing with all these hoops and things like this, and I would say to listeners, you know, you really need to choose a tent for what you're going to do with it. Yeah. For example, if you're going to be camped in the forest, you have trees all around you, wind isn't a severe problem. You don't need to strive for high C on the wind thing. What you want bug proofing, you want rain proofing, you want a covering so that you can get in and out of the tent without tracking a bunch of water in there, okay? This isn't a joke, it's tragic, because there's a tent manufacturer whose name I won't divulge. It's a U.S. tent manufacturer who their flagship tent cost about, what is it, $600-700, I forget what it is. And they brag that, it's a Gore-Tex tent. Mm-hmm. Which means it's single layer. Okay, so personally, I wouldn't have a single layer tent, period, for the reasons I said. But what they brag about in this tent is that during setup, 2 of the poles have to be inserted from the inside of the tent. So they say, well, if it's raining, it's easy. You just go in there and you're working from inside of the tent. Well, I don't know how much time the engineers spent out camping in the rain, but the last thing you want to do when you're soaking wet, your body's soaking wet,
It's
and
go inside.
your boots are soaking wet, is go inside a tent and try threading poles. Okay, so a lot of this stuff is designed to sell, and it's selling us. But I would say to listeners, surprisingly, you really don't need to spend a lot of money for a good tent. What you want to look for is good design. So first, acquire knowledge. Acquire the knowledge you need so that you can look at a tent and say, yeah, that's an expensive tent, but I wouldn't have it because the fly doesn't touch the ground, there are exposed seams, there's stitching, there's a million poles I got to thread. I'm going to need a user's manual for the first week every night to remember how to set this up. This thing's an engineering nightmare, okay? You will probably be happier with a simple design that goes up fast and comes down fast. And that's really kind of my advice on tents.
Well,
don't get suckered in by a bunch of high-tech features.
Well, would you go for more?
Wait. Did you know we even have some U.S. tents now that have battery deals that are wired for plug-in, so you can plug in your cell phone?
I've heard about this. I've heard about this. So, with that note, Cliff, would you go with a dome tent or would you go with your A-frame ridge? What would you favor?
All right, here's the thing. You have to remember the history of what's going on here. Dome tents were designed for mountaineering so that they could be small, compact, had a small footprint, and could be shoved into very tight areas. That's what domes were designed for, okay? The problem with domes is they require a lot of poles to set up. They have a separate fly that has to be put on later. Okay, that's the problem with it. The one good thing about a dome that I think is a good thing about it is you can sleep in any direction once you're inside it. Okay, that's a plus. But you also have a fly that covers all your windows. So you have to have a zipper deal to get in there to see the windows. It's a much more complex thing. So basically, when it comes to domes, there are good domes and there are terrible domes. And with domes, you're going to get really exactly what you pay for. You go to your local discount store and you buy a cheap one, congratulations, you bought a disaster.
Yes.
Okay? All right? And for some domes, or some of these tents even have fiberglass poles. Read my lips. There's no such thing as a good fiberglass pole. Period. It's aluminum or forget it. Okay? Yes. All right. Now, if you go to a simpler design like A-frame styles or whatever, A-frames are the simplest of the designs. They're relatively inexpensive to manufacture. They go up fast. They utilize space reasonably well. If you're looking to save money and you can find a nice, a well-built A-frame, you'll probably be very, very happy with it if you're camping in the forest. Now, tunnels are really designed for high wind conditions. If you're going to do a trip on the barren lands in Canada or something like that, you're probably going to want a tunnel. If you don't want a tunnel, then you're going to want a dome. But the kind of dome you're going to want is a geodesic dome, which has poles that go everywhere, and these tents are $500 plus.
Yes. Well, that is a great review of what to go about with tents there, Cliff. That is really good. Now, I'm going to finish off with this one. Cooking utensils. Trangias or stoves, or what do you usually go for when you're going on expeditions?
We can do a whole dissertation on this, actually.
I can imagine.
You want to talk about, we can talk, let's just take a second, talk about cookware, and then, we should actually come back and talk about stoves, because stoves are the one thing that I think have gotten worse over the years, okay? Yeah. Stoves were better 30, 40 years ago. But I think so. But anyway, let's talk.
On a brief level, we will come back to trangias and stoves on another program. So let's go for a brief discussion on what you would bring. Okay.
All right. Well, you need a set of pots, okay? You can go downtown and you can go to an equipment store and you can buy a set of expensive stainless steel pots. That's fine if you want to spend the money, but you don't need to. Most of my pots I just pick up at some discount store and I modify them. That's all you have to do. They might need, if you're cooking on a fire, you're going to need a bail. That's all you have to do is just drill a couple holes and rivet on some kind of a handle thing. And furthermore, I basically like aluminum pots. I know we went through this thing with aluminum, Alzheimer's disease. That's all been disproven, okay? Yeah. So why carry heavy stainless steel when a lighter weight aluminum pots will do just as well? And you know what? Even if it was an issue with Alzheimer's disease, which it appears not to be, what, are you using this every day? No, you use it for a week a year. It's not a big deal. But so you can oftentimes find older aluminum pots for not a lot of money. The key thing is you need a nesting set. So you're going to have to look around to find what you need. Usually for a party of 4, 2 nesting pots and a skillet are fine. For a skillet, I just buy one of these nice nice skillets in a discount store, a big 12-inch Teflon lined skillet. I cut the handle off, I make a new handle that clips on, and that's a done deal. So that's what I do. One of the things that's I'm seeing in cookware today that makes me laugh and I shake my head is manufacturers are trying to find ways for you to cook your food faster. Right. So they are welding on the bottom of these pots. They look like little fins, like this is going to be a rocket getting ready to take off. And so when it's on the stove, yeah, it heats up faster. That's the good news. But as soon as it's off the stove, it cools as fast as it did before. And don't set one of these pots on the ground. Think all the garbage and duff those little fins are going to pick up. And those pots don't nest. Years ago, I developed this cozy system of cooking, like Grandma covering her teapot with these cozies. This is what I use on the Arctic. This is what I use on all my trips. And a cozy system of cooking is what's really going to save you a lot of stove fuel, and it'll keep food hot long enough for seconds. And either A, we can get back and detail this on your show sometime, or if they can, most of my books have this cozy system in there, and I think some of them are available in the UK. So, but yeah, that's the whole cooking thing is a whole nother subject, and the whole stove thing is a whole nother time too.
I think that is where we're going to leave it, Cliff, because it's been great talking to you once more, telling us all about your expeditions, telling us all about your camping, and what tents and stuff to bring. If you have any questions, you can always get in touch with Scouting Radio. We're going to plug Cliff's website again. Cliff, what's the website address again?
It's cliff-jacobson.com. There's some stuff on there, but I would just, if any UK readers want to get any of my books, I wish they could order them off my website. They can't. It's just too expensive to send. It's just too expensive to mail a 2-pound book to the UK. It's too bad we don't have a reciprocal postage things for books. But they do have Amazon in the UK. So they can get my books off of Amazon UK. And, I just want to close here, I know, with you telling your listeners, you know what? Justin and I were always talking on the phone before, but now all of a sudden we figured out how to work Skype here so I could see him. He's a handsome-looking dude, you guys. So anyway, this was really a lot of fun, Justin.
I've been told, Cliff, that I have a face for radio several times.